Welcome to the family. If you enjoy powerful stories and wild adventures, subscribe now, hit like and share with someone who will love it too. Lady Vera of House Stellaris pressed her elegant fingers against the viewport, watching the primitive blue-green world rotate slowly beneath her ship. The third planet of this unremarkable star system had been designated as Earth, home to a species that had somehow managed to impress the Galactic Council enough to warrant first contact protocols. She found it difficult to believe. "My lady," her aide, Commander Knox, approached with measured steps. "The human delegation has agreed to meet. Their representative will be arriving at the designated coordinates within the solar cycle." Vera's crystalline skin shimmered with barely contained disdain. At nearly 8 feet tall, with graceful limbs that moved like liquid silver, she was the epitome of Altarian nobility. Her people had ruled star systems when these humans were still discovering fire. The very notion that she, a high-born daughter of the Stellar Empire, should need to negotiate with such a young species was beneath her station. "What do our intelligence reports say about their capabilities?" she asked, her voice carrying the melodic tones that marked her as royalty. "Primitive, mostly. They've barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their technology is crude, and their military—" Knox paused, consulting his datapad. "Their military appears to rely heavily on kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. Nothing that should pose a threat to our shields." Vera nodded, satisfied. This would be a simple matter of establishing dominance and securing the mining rights to Earth's rare mineral deposits. The Galactic Council's neutrality laws required formal negotiations, but surely these humans would recognize their place in the cosmic hierarchy quickly enough. The shuttle bay doors opened with a pneumatic hiss, and Vera descended the ramp with practiced grace. The human delegation waited in the sterile meeting chamber, and she couldn't help but notice how small they appeared. The tallest among them barely reached her shoulder, their movements clumsy and inefficient compared to her own fluid motion. "Greetings," she said, her universal translator converting her words into their primitive language. "I am Lady Vera of House Stellaris, third daughter of the Altarian Empire, keeper of the stellar flame and guardian of 7 systems." She paused, expecting the appropriate genuflection. Instead, the lead human simply stepped forward and extended his hand, a bizarre gesture she didn't understand. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, United Earth Defense Force. Welcome to our system." The lack of proper deference irritated her, but she maintained her composure. "Captain Morrison, I trust you understand why I'm here. Your species has resources that the Empire requires. We're prepared to offer you protection and technological advancement in exchange for exclusive mining rights to your heavy metals and rare earth elements." Morrison's eyes, an unusual shade of blue that seemed to shift like Earth's oceans, met hers directly. Another breach of protocol that suggested these humans didn't understand their place. "That's quite an offer, Lady Vera. But before we discuss terms, perhaps you'd like to see what humanity has been working on." "Working on?" Vera's confusion was genuine. What could these primitives possibly have developed that would interest her? "Our defensive preparations," Morrison said, with what she would later recognize as a distinctly human smile. "After all, we've been watching your ships approach for the past 6 months. We thought it best to be ready for negotiations." For the first time since arriving in this system, Lady Vera felt a flicker of uncertainty. The confidence in the human's voice, the way his companion stood with quiet alertness rather than cowering fear, something was different here, something she hadn't accounted for in her grand plans for easy dominance. The tour of Earth's primary defense station left Lady Vera speechless, though she fought to maintain her composure. What she had expected to find were crude kinetic weapons and primitive shield generators. Instead, she found herself staring at technology that, while different from Altarian designs, showed an ingenuity that made her skin shimmer with nervous energy. "This is our primary defense grid," Captain Morrison explained, gesturing to a massive array that stretched across the orbital platform. "We call it the Aegis Network. Each station can coordinate with the others to create overlapping fields of protection." Commander Knox, who had accompanied them on the tour, scanned the installations with his equipment. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he worked. "My lady," he whispered in their native tongue, "these energy signatures, They're using some form of quantum entanglement to link their defensive systems. The computational power required should be beyond their capabilities. Vera studied the humans more carefully. Morrison moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew his strengths, while his team of engineers and officers displayed none of the submissive behavior she expected from a primitive species. They answered her questions directly, explained their technology without fear, and showed no signs of being intimidated by her obvious superiority. "How long did this take to construct?" she asked, trying to keep the growing concern from her voice. "About 18 months of intensive work," Morrison replied. "Once we detected your fleet at the edge of our system, we figured we should prepare for the possibility that you might not come in peace." "Detected our fleet?" Vera's composure cracked slightly. "Our ships employ stealth technology that has been perfected over millennia. How could you possibly—" "Human creativity," Morrison interrupted with that unsettling smile. "We may not have your advanced technology, but we've learned to be very good at improvising solutions. Would you like to see our early warning network?" The next stop on their tour revealed a system of sensor arrays that utilized principles Vera had never encountered. Instead of relying on advanced gravitational sensors or subspace detectors, the humans had created a network that used quantum-paired particles to detect faster-than-light disturbances across impossible distances. "It's not as elegant as your technology," Morrison admitted, "but it works. We knew you were coming long before you knew we could see you." Vera's mind raced. If these humans could detect her fleet's approach, if they had managed to construct meaningful defenses in such a short time, then her initial assessment had been catastrophically wrong. The easy conquest she had envisioned was looking increasingly unlikely. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice carrying new undertones of respect, "perhaps we should return to the negotiation table. It seems there's more to discuss than I initially realized." As they made their way back to the conference room, Vera found herself studying the humans with fresh eyes. They weren't just primitive creatures to be dominated. They were potential adversaries who had proven capable of surprising her at every turn. The realization both excited and terrified her. Morrison held the door open for her, another of their strange customs, and she noticed the calluses on his hands, the way his uniform showed signs of practical use rather than ceremonial display. These weren't courtiers playing at war. They were soldiers who had earned their positions through merit rather than birth. "Lady Vera," Morrison said as they took their seats, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what both our species really want from this encounter." Lady Vera sat across from Captain Morrison, her posture rigid with barely contained frustration. 3 days of negotiations had yielded nothing but stalemate, and she was beginning to understand that these humans were far more formidable than she had initially believed. "Your terms are unacceptable," she said, her crystalline skin flickering with agitation. "The Altarian Empire offers protection, advanced technology, and entrance into galactic civilization. In return, we ask only for reasonable access to your planetary resources." Morrison leaned back in his chair, completely at ease despite facing someone who could crush him with her bare hands. "And by reasonable access, you mean exclusive mining rights to 60% of our heavy metals, rare earth elements, and complete control over our space-based manufacturing. That's not protection, Lady Vera. That's colonization with extra steps." "You speak as if you have a choice in the matter," Vera replied, her voice carrying a dangerous edge. "My fleet consists of 12 dreadnoughts, each capable of reducing your cities to ash. Your quaint defensive measures are impressive for a primitive species, but surely you don't believe you can stand against the might of the Empire." "Maybe not," Morrison admitted, and for a moment Vera felt a surge of satisfaction. Then he continued, "But we'd make it expensive for you. Very expensive." The way he said it sent a chill through her. There was no bravado in his voice, no desperate bluster. Just a calm, matter-of-fact assessment that suggested he had run the calculations and accepted the likely outcome. "Captain," she said more softly, "surely there's a compromise we can reach. Your people have shown remarkable ingenuity, but you must see the futility of resistance. Join the Empire willingly, and you'll be treated as valued partners rather than conquered subjects." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, then stood and walked to the viewport that showed Earth hanging in the distance. "Do you know what humans call someone who fights a battle they can't win, Lady Vera?" She shook her head, genuinely curious. "A hero," he said simply. "And Earth has a very long history of producing heroes when we need them most." Before Vera could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Commander Knox burst into the room, his face pale with shock. "My lady, we're receiving reports from the fleet. The humans they've done something to our ships." Vera's blood ran cold. "Explain." "I don't understand it myself," Knox stammered, "but somehow they've infiltrated our computer networks, not through conventional hacking, but through some kind of viral program that's spreading through our quantum communication arrays. Our ships are reporting system failures across multiple decks." Morrison turned from the viewport, and Vera saw something in his expression that made her stomach drop. "I should probably mention," he said conversationally, "that while we were giving you that tour of our defenses, our people were studying your technology. We've gotten very good at reverse engineering things we don't fully understand." "That's impossible," Vera whispered. "Our security protocols are designed to prevent attacks from species with technology similar to your own," Morrison interrupted. "They're not designed to deal with humans who think outside the box." Vera's mind reeled. In 3 days, these supposedly primitive humans had not only identified weaknesses in Altarian security systems, but had exploited them to launch a successful cyber attack against her fleet. The implications were staggering. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Morrison returned to his seat, his manner unchanged despite having just demonstrated that humanity could strike at the heart of the Empire's military might. "The same thing we wanted 3 days ago, Lady Vera. A fair partnership between equals. We're not interested in being your subjects, but we're very interested in being your allies." For the first time in her life, Lady Vera found herself face to face with a species that refused to acknowledge her inherent superiority. And despite herself, she was beginning to find their defiance intriguing. Lady Vera stared at the reports streaming across her personal display, each one more disturbing than the last. In the 6 hours since the humans had demonstrated their ability to compromise Altarian systems, her fleet had experienced cascading failures that defied all logic. "The quantum virus is adapting," Commander Knox reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Every time our technical crews develop a countermeasure, the program evolves to circumvent it. It's learning from our responses faster than we can implement solutions." "How is that possible?" Vera demanded. "Artificial intelligence of that sophistication requires massive quantum computing arrays. These humans don't have the technology to—" "Actually, we do," Captain Morrison interrupted, from behind her. She spun around to find him standing in the doorway of her private quarters, completely at ease, despite having somehow bypassed her security systems. "We just use it differently than you do." Vera's hand moved instinctively to her sidearm, but Morrison raised his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not here to harm you, Lady Vera. I thought it was time we had a private conversation, away from the posturing and protocols." "How did you get in here?" she asked, though part of her already suspected the answer. "The same way we got into your ship's systems," Morrison replied, settling into one of her chairs without invitation. "Human ingenuity. Your people build magnificent technology. But you think in very linear patterns. We've learned to think sideways." Despite her anger and confusion, Vera found herself genuinely curious. "Explain." Morrison leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. "Your quantum virus countermeasures assume the attacking program will follow logical parameters. But we didn't create a traditional virus. We created something that mimics human problem-solving patterns, chaotic, intuitive, and completely unpredictable." "You created an artificial intelligence based on human cognition." Vera's skin shimmered with surprise. "That should be impossible. Human neural patterns are too chaotic to replicate in quantum matrices." "Which is exactly why it works," Morrison said, with that infuriating smile. "Your systems are designed to defend against rational attacks. They don't know how to handle something that solves problems through intuition and random leaps of logic." Vera sank into her command chair, the implications hitting her like a physical blow. If humans could create AI that thought like they did, the strategic implications were enormous. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand something," Morrison said, his voice becoming gentler. "We don't want to be your enemies, Lady Vera, but we won't be your subjects either. What we're offering is something your empire has never encountered before, a genuine partnership between equals." "Equals?" Vera's voice carried a note of disbelief. "Captain, I am nobility of the oldest house in the galaxy. My bloodline traces back to the first stellar empire. How can you possibly consider yourself my equal?" Morrison was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Lady Vera, how many worlds has your house conquered through military might?" 17 star systems, she replied automatically, pride evident in her voice. "And how many of those conquests required you to personally adapt, to change your fundamental understanding of how the universe works?" Vera frowned. "I don't understand the question." "In the past week, you've had to completely revise your assessment of humanity 3 times. You've been forced to acknowledge that your initial intelligence was wrong, that your technology isn't invulnerable, and that your strategic assumptions were flawed. That kind of adaptation, it's not something you were trained for, is it?" The accuracy of his observations stung. Vera had been raised to project strength and certainty, to never show doubt or weakness. The constant stream of surprises and challenges from these humans had forced her to question everything she thought she knew about her place in the galaxy. "What are you proposing?" she asked finally. "A real alliance," Morrison said. "Not one based on dominance and submission, but on mutual respect and shared strength. Your people have incredible technology and vast experience. We have adaptability and innovation. Together, we could accomplish things neither of our species could achieve alone." Vera looked at this human, who had somehow managed to challenge everything she believed about herself and her people's place in the universe. The smart move would be to reject his proposal, to find a way to crush this upstart species before they became a real threat to the established order. But as she studied Morrison's calm confidence, his obvious intelligence, and his complete lack of deference to her supposed superiority, she found herself wondering if perhaps the smart move and the right move might not be the same thing. Lady Vera stood on the observation deck of the human station, watching her fleet maintain its position in the outer system. For the first time in days, the ships were functioning normally. The humans had voluntarily withdrawn their viral programs as a gesture of good faith during the continuing negotiations. Captain Morrison joined her at the viewport, carrying 2 cups of what he called coffee, a stimulant beverage that had become surprisingly popular among her crew during their extended stay. "Your people are remarkable," she said without preamble, accepting the offered cup. "In 3 centuries of conquest, the Empire has never encountered a species capable of such rapid adaptation. Maybe that's because you've never given any species the chance to show what they're capable of," Morrison replied gently. "It's hard to demonstrate innovation when you're fighting for survival." Vera sipped the bitter liquid, finding its complexity strangely appealing. "You realize what you're asking of me? If I return to the Empire with a treaty of equals rather than a conquest, it will be seen as failure. My standing, my house's reputation, will be enhanced by being the first Altarian noble to secure a true alliance with a species that has proven its worth," Morrison interrupted. "Lady Vera, your people respect strength. We've demonstrated that we have it." She turned to study his profile, noting the way he carried himself with quiet confidence rather than desperate bravado. "Why do you persist in calling it strength? By any objective measure, my fleet could destroy your world." "Could you?" Morrison asked, meeting her gaze directly. "Even setting aside the tactical challenges we've demonstrated, could you personally give the order to exterminate 4 billion people? Could you live with yourself afterward?" The question hit her like a physical blow. In all her strategic planning, she had never seriously considered the moral implications of conquest. It was simply the natural order. The strong dominated the weak, and the weak served or perished. But as she looked down at the blue-green world below, imagining the vast cities filled with beings like Morrison, she found the concept suddenly abhorrent. "You're trying to manipulate me," she said, though without conviction. "I'm trying to help you see what you already know," Morrison replied, "that there's a difference between strength and brutality, between leadership and domination. Your empire has built itself on the latter, but it could become something greater." Before Vera could respond, Commander Knox approached with visible urgency. "My lady, we're receiving priority communications from the Empire. Admiral Kane is requesting immediate status reports on the conquest progress." Vera felt her stomach tighten. Admiral Kane was her uncle, a man who viewed diplomacy as weakness and negotiations as extended surrender ceremonies. If he became impatient with her progress, he might decide to take direct action. "How long before he expects a response?" she asked. "Standard protocol allows 72 hours for initial conquest phases," Knox replied. "After that, he'll likely dispatch reinforcements to assist with the operation." Morrison had gone very still beside her. "Reinforcements? My uncle commands the 3rd Battle Fleet," Vera explained reluctantly. 50 dreadnoughts and associated support vessels. He has a reputation for decisive action. The implications hung in the air between them. While Vera's smaller fleet had been neutralized through clever tactics and technological innovation, Kane's massive force would represent an entirely different level of threat. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked, his voice calm despite the magnitude of the problem they now faced. "Perhaps a week," Vera said. "Maybe less if he decides Earth represents a significant threat to Imperial interests." Morrison nodded slowly, then surprised her with a slight smile. "Then we'd better work fast." "Work fast to do what?" she asked, confused by his apparent lack of concern. "To give you something worth reporting back to your empire," Morrison said. "Lady Vera, how would you like to be the first Altarian noble to return home with a military innovation that could revolutionize Imperial warfare?" Despite everything she had learned about human unpredictability, Vera found herself once again caught off guard by Morrison's audacity. "What are you proposing?" "A demonstration of what human-Altarian cooperation can accomplish," Morrison said, his eyes bright with possibility. Something impressive enough to make Admiral Kane see the value in negotiation rather than destruction. As Vera looked at this remarkable human who had already forced her to question everything she thought she knew about strength and leadership, she realized she was about to take the biggest gamble of her life. The joint laboratory aboard the human station buzzed with activity unlike anything Lady Vera had ever witnessed. Human engineers worked alongside her technical staff, their different approaches to problem-solving, creating a synergy that defied all her previous experience with interspecies cooperation. "The principle is sound," Chief Engineer Lisa Park explained, her hands moving rapidly over holographic displays that showed impossible fusion readings. "By combining your quantum field manipulation with our adaptive AI systems, we can create shield matrices that don't just deflect energy, they learn from each attack and automatically adjust their frequency patterns." Commander Knox, who had initially been skeptical of working with humans, was now completely absorbed in the technical data. "The efficiency improvements are remarkable, my lady. This hybrid technology could increase our defensive capabilities by over 300%. Vera watched the collaboration with growing amazement. Her people approached problems with methodical precision, following established protocols and proven techniques. The humans, by contrast, seemed to attack each challenge from multiple angles, simultaneously, proposing solutions that bordered on the impossible, and then somehow making them work. "How long until we have a working prototype?" she asked. "We're ready to test now," Morrison replied, entering the lab with a satisfied expression. "The fabrication units have completed construction of the first hybrid shield generator. If you're ready, we can demonstrate its capabilities." 20 minutes later, Vera stood in the station's primary control room, watching as a test drone equipped with the new shield technology faced off against increasingly powerful weapon systems. Traditional Altarian shields would have failed after the 3rd power level, but the hybrid system continued to adapt and strengthen with each assault. "Incredible," she breathed, her skin shimmering with excitement. "The applications for this technology are endless. Fleet defense, planetary protection, even personal armor systems could benefit from this innovation. And it's only possible because of the combination of our technologies, Morrison pointed out. Neither species could have developed this alone. Vera was about to respond when her communication array chimed with an incoming priority message. The image of Admiral Kane materialized in the center of the room, his scarred features set in their habitual scowl. "Niece," he said without preamble, "I trust you have progress to report. The Empire grows impatient with this extended negotiation. Period." "Uncle," Vera replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I have indeed made significant progress. However, the situation here is more complex than our initial intelligence suggested." Kane's expression darkened. "Complex? Lady Vera, you command 12 dreadnoughts against a primitive species that has barely achieved faster-than-light travel. What complexity could possibly require more than a few days to resolve?" Vera glanced at Morrison, who nodded encouragingly. "Admiral, I would like to propose a demonstration of what this species is capable of. I believe you'll find their potential illuminating." "A demonstration?" Kane's voice carried dangerous undertones. "Vera, you are beginning to sound like a diplomat rather than a conqueror. I hope you haven't forgotten your duty to the Empire." "Never, Uncle. But I have discovered something that could benefit the entire Imperial fleet. If you would grant me one more day, I can show you technology that will revolutionize our military capabilities." Kane was silent for a long moment, studying her through the holographic connection. "One day, Vera, and it had better be impressive, enough to justify this delay. If not, I'll be taking personal command of the operation." The connection terminated, leaving the control room in tense silence. "Well," Morrison said finally, "no pressure there." Despite the gravity of the situation, Vera found herself smiling at his dry humor. "Captain, I hope you understand what you've gotten yourself into. My uncle is not known for his patience or his appreciation of innovation. Then we'll just have to give him something so impressive he can't ignore it," Morrison replied. "How do you feel about a field test under combat conditions?" Vera's eyes widened. "You're not suggesting a mock battle between one of your ships equipped with the hybrid shields and a standard Imperial vessel," Morrison finished. "Your uncle can observe from a safe distance while we demonstrate the effectiveness of human-Altarian cooperation." The audacity of the proposal took Vera's breath away. Morrison was essentially suggesting they stage a demonstration that could either validate her approach or result in the complete destruction of Earth's only hope for survival. But as she looked around the control room at the mixed teams of humans and Altarians working together with unprecedented success, she realized that sometimes the greatest risks offered the greatest rewards. "Very well, Captain Morrison. Let's show my uncle what humans are truly capable of." Admiral Kane's massive flagship, the Imperial Dominance, cast its shadow across the outer system as it took position to observe the demonstration. Lady Vera stood on the bridge of her own vessel, the Stellar Pride, watching as her ship's hybrid shield systems came online for the first time in actual combat conditions. "All systems showing optimal performance, my lady," her weapons officer reported. "The human-designed adaptive algorithms are fully integrated with our quantum field generators." Across from them, the Void Hunter, one of Kane's escort vessels, prepared for the mock engagement. Its crew had no knowledge of the technological innovations they were about to face. As far as they knew, this was simply a training exercise to demonstrate their superiority over primitive human defenses. Captain Morrison stood beside Vera on the bridge, his presence a reminder of how dramatically her perspective had changed over the past weeks. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly. "No," she admitted. "But that seems to be the nature of working with humans, constantly attempting things that should be impossible." The engagement began with standard Imperial tactics. The Void Hunter opened with plasma cannon barrages that would have overwhelmed any conventional defense system. But as the energy stream struck the Stellar Pride's shields, something remarkable happened. Instead of weakening under the assault, the hybrid barriers began to adapt, analyzing the attack patterns and adjusting their frequency matrices to provide optimal protection. "Impossible," Kane's voice crackled over the communication channel. "Their shields are actually strengthening under fire. What technology is this?" Vera took a deep breath, knowing her next words would determine the fate of both species. "Uncle, This is the result of human-Altarian technological cooperation. By combining our quantum field manipulation with their adaptive intelligence systems, we've created defensive capabilities that exceed anything in the Imperial arsenal. The battle continued for several more minutes, with the Void Hunter escalating through increasingly powerful weapon systems. Each time the hybrid shields not only held, but became more effective at countering the specific type of attack being employed. Finally, Kane called a halt to the demonstration. Minutes later, his shuttle docked with the Stellar Pride, and the Admiral strode onto the bridge with his characteristic intensity. But instead of the anger Vera had expected, she saw something else in his eyes: hunger. "Show me everything," he demanded without preamble. The next several hours passed in a blur of technical briefings and system demonstrations. Kane examined every aspect of the hybrid technology, questioned the human engineers extensively, and studied the tactical implications with the thoroughness that had made him one of the Empire's most feared commanders. Finally, he turned to Morrison with something approaching respect. "Captain, your species has accomplished something remarkable. You've created technology that could shift the balance of power throughout the galaxy." "With respect, Admiral," Morrison replied, "we've demonstrated what's possible when species work together as equals rather than as conquerors and conquered. This technology only exists because Lady Vera was willing to see humanity as partners rather than subjects." Kane's scarred features showed surprise at the human's directness, but also consideration. "Partners?" he mused. "An interesting concept. And you believe this partnership could produce additional innovations?" "I believe it's only the beginning," Morrison said confidently. "Our species approach problems from completely different perspectives. The potential for breakthrough discoveries is enormous." Kane turned to his niece, studying her with new attention. "Vera, you've accomplished something unprecedented. Not just the technology, but the alliance itself. The Empire has gained new partners instead of new subjects." "Does this mean—" Vera began hopefully. "It means," Kane interrupted with a rare smile, "that you've just become the most valuable negotiator in the Imperial fleet. The Emperor will want to know how you achieved this breakthrough, and more importantly, how we can replicate it with other species." As the Admiral's words sank in, Vera realized that Morrison had been right from the beginning. True strength didn't come from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to recognize when cooperation could achieve more than conquest. "Captain Morrison," she said formally, "on behalf of the Altarian Empire, I would like to propose a formal alliance between our peoples, not as conquerors and subjects, but as equals working toward mutual benefit." Morrison's smile was answer enough, but he replied anyway, "Lady Vera, I can't think of anything humanity would be more honored to accept." As the two species began planning their shared future, Vera reflected on how much had changed since her arrival in Earth's system. She had come expecting an easy conquest, and instead found something far more valuable, a partnership that would reshape both civilizations for the better. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in her life, Lady Vera was excited to see what impossible things might become possible next.